Hi, this is Tony, the host of the Flicks XRayed podcast. Each week, I am joined by guests.
Ew.
Hello.
Yo.
Why, hello there.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
And we have a roundtable discussion where we dig deep and X-ray a bunch of our favorite films and some really terrible ones too. We really like to go back and take a look at films that may be forgotten, maybe in the past, and still lovable films. If you want, you can follow us on all the major platforms, iTunes, Google, Stitcher. If you want to find out more, you can find us online at www.flicksxrayed.com. And you can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram if you want to reach out to us. Good night, Internet.
What you people want? Just a couple more minutes of your time, about the same duration as the rest of your life.
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bishop, and with me today is the whole crew, Sam Stepanenko and Trish Coughlin.
Hello. I got my toque on because it's fucking cold.
Yes.
Not in here, but I just couldn't be bothered to take it off because, well, you know, my hair.
That's
what
right.
there is of it.
You know, well, you're in the hipster seat, so.
Yeah.
You gotta play the part.
Yeah. And you might hear my furnace kick in because he's fucking cold and I ain't turning that off for this one.
Oh no. It is a chilly day here.
But I think that's just North America now.
Yes. Yeah, I think it really is. And it actually, by the time this episode drops, it's supposed to start warming up here, but we'll see.
It's Alberta.
So we're
Who
talking
knows?
from the past. We're going to call that the Ice Age from 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
By the time you hear this.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah.
I don't know. If it's the Ice Age, we're doing okay. This isn't too bad. I've been through worse. But
Yeah.
We have been, but yeah, we've been spoiled this year.
Oh, yeah. When the U.S. got the blast and the Northeast got the blast before we did, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's gorgeous here.
Yeah.
most of January,
It's your fault.
above zero.
Well, especially when I said, hey, hell finally froze over to the Americans. And that's just
Karma.
I was listening to something. I think it was one of my favorite British comics, Jeremy Hardy, had died. R.I.P. Jeremy Hardy. So I was listening to the news quiz, and they were talking about there's a place I think Hell in New Jersey, where it's frozen.
Yeah.
Go figure. I knew hell was somewhere on Earth. I just didn't know it was in Jersey.
Yeah. There's more
I
than
think
one.
so.
There's one in the Caymans as well.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
my parents went there one time, and they sent me a postcard from hell.
Yeah.
A postcard from hell.
I have
love
pictures
that.
of myself in hell.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
And then I went to Iceland, and I tried to go to what is apparently the mouth of hell, but it was closed.
Oh, that's very H.P. Lovecraft. It was closed for dental work.
I don't know. I was there, and I pulled into the little interpretive center, and there's nobody there. So I was like, oh no, so is hell closed? What's happening?
Oh my, I didn't know it was possible.
That does explain the presidency.
Maybe they were afraid of me.
Yeah, they're all here now, right? They all got out.
They all
Everybody
got
turn
out.
off the lights. Pretend we're not home.
That'll work.
Trick or treat.
No, I'm not buying it.
Candygram.
Ooh. Resist, Jay, resist. All right, today we are continuing our month-long journey of women in horror. And today we're focusing on Kathryn Bigelow. Yeah. We've talked about Kathryn Bigelow before.
A couple
Yes.
times.
Yeah, we've talked about her in episode 36 was our first one, Point Break, where I think that was pre-you, wasn't it?
No, that was me.
Were you?
Yeah.
All right. Was it you and me who actually liked the remake?
Yes.
I know it wasn't Trish.
No. hard pass on that remake.
And I think it was more because it was so visually well done rather than a better story.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it wasn't a better story.
Because we discussed that. You admitted that it wasn't a good story.
No, it was a fun watch.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
But you want to know more? Episode 36, and we also talked about it a little more recently. Strange Days, episode 119.
Yes.
That was just last year, wasn't it?
That was just last year, and our friend Tyler guested on that episode.
It was our New Year's one because of the content of Strange Days.
Yes.
That's right.
And it's interesting about Bigelow because I was doing a little bit of reading after I watched this one, and it's funny how to watch her career progress and how many of her movies are cult favorites, right? Because you have the one Near Dark, you have Strange Days, which is a bit of a cult favorite, and then you've got
Point Break for sure.
Point Break for sure, right? So her early career, she has a lot of cult favorites, and then she moves on to Academy Awards.
Yeah,
Right.
Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker, only woman to ever win an Academy Award for directing.
Yeah, to watch that movie and the subject matter and with the bombs and military stuff, it doesn't feel like a woman would have directed or even come up with this, but it's great. I mean, it's a fantastic movie, and that's just goes to show you, like, a good movie doesn't have anything to do with gender.
No. And it's like...
people seem to think
when
so.
people are like, oh, it feels like a woman directed this. Well, maybe it does. In some instances, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But other times, it's like going, why does it matter? Like, I mean, I have to watch a fucking ton of romantic comedies that are directed by men, and sometimes I'm like, oh, yeah, it feels like a dude directed this.
Yeah, because they're terrible. But it's terrible regardless who directs them.
It depends. We're going to do another one because we have to fix that genre. But was it in Strange Days 2? We also found out with that one, they had to actually create technology so that it would actually be filmable, certain parts of it.
Yeah.
Well, that, I think, just comes from being married to James Cameron.
It's true. But I mean, still, honestly.
But because that's just what he does. But I mean, her struggles as a female director start here because the producer was like, if you can't handle this, they basically gave her 5 days. If she can't handle it, you're out. You're fired. And obviously that didn't happen because we got the cult favorite Near Dark in 1987, which was a good year for the vampire.
It was a good year for the vampire, yes.
Yes. Lost Boys also that year.
Yeah, and there's a weird connection between those two movies, apparently.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but yes, there is a connection between the movies.
Yeah, Jason Patrick was in The Lost Boys.
That's right, and his brother's in
and his
this
half-brother is Homer in this one.
That's right.
I forgot that Joshua Miller was Jason Patrick's half-brother.
Yeah. I even read that yesterday, and it just popped out in my brain this morning.
I knew that, but I had completely forgotten.
But yeah, good year for the vampire. Kathryn Bigelow actually wanted to make a Western, but Westerns, much like now, weren't in vogue, and you couldn't sell a Western idea to save your life. But this really does have a Western type of feel to it.
It does, yeah. And there's some, especially in like the costuming even, right?
Yeah, it leaves a lot of the vampire tropes in the closet. I mean, really all it's got for the vampire tropes is the allergy to sunlight, the enhanced strength, and the long-lived immortality.
Oh, and the blood drinking.
The blood drinking, obviously, and, fire was also a bad one, but otherwise they're fairly impervious to harm. But that's it. I don't think we ever see him walk in front of a mirror. Religious stuff isn't brought into it. In fact, I think Lance Henriksen had a cross on his gun. So they just kind of ignore a lot of that. But I love how this movie's put together because there's a lot of subtleties within the costuming, within some of the dialogue that give away the history of some of these vampires within this family that's formed, which I think is really cool.
What's funny, like when they wanted to make a Western, it does have a very Western feel. And when you're watching these vampires, I'm like, actually, vampires as sort of like Western characters, like loners, drifters wandering through the landscape, makes complete sense.
Yeah, Severin was probably very much from that era, from the 1800s, for sure.
Well, because there's that subtle hint that he fought, that Jesse fought for the South.
Yeah, Jesse was in the Civil War, and on the side that lost.
Yes, and Severin, and there's also a reference that Jesse and Severin had started the Chicago Fire. Right?
Oh, I love that reference.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
like,
so
that was probably one of the earliest references they make that give you an idea of the history of these vampires.
Yeah.
And the one that visually looks the youngest is probably the oldest among them because even Jesse calls Homer, who
Old
just
man.
looks like a 12 or 13-year-old kid, old man. So he's been around a long time, which I think is pretty cool. And I think May's probably the youngest of them.
Most certainly the youngest.
4 years.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what their So
But-
she was pretty fresh still.
She was really new, which is weird when they have sort of that line, like, do you miss the days? Like, I don't really remember. I'm like, it's only been 4 years. I can see you still remembering. The others, probably not. But you, maybe.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just asking if anybody's worked nights for 4 years.
Yeah, it's true. It's pretty easy to get used to not seeing daylight.
True, but I just feel that 4 years we wouldn't completely forget.
No, I don't think so. But there's that natural apprehension of wanting to experience it again.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Sunlight. I burn.
Yes.
I burn really easy in the sun.
Yeah,
It's not a tanning thing.
yeah. There's one that brings me to a scene in the movie that one scene that bugs me that I would like to change is the scene where at the motel where the police show up and where Homer has that meltdown like a child. If he's an old man, even though he's still not fully developed mentally, I'm thinking that he's still going to be somewhat stunted.
Yeah, he
I
would have been
think
turned
his
as a
panic
child.
attack was
Yeah.
maybe out of character for me.
Well, part of me thinks, like, because as a kid, the way he deals with this world is very different than the adults do, because the way he hunts, he plays a victim. Like,
Yeah.
they have that bike, and when we first see him hunt, it makes it look like there was a hit and run. There's been an accident, and bang, easy prey. So hasn't been equipped to defend himself in this regard, and being the oldest among them, probably has the most fear of the sunlight. And we don't know what his trauma is and why that would be as big of a deal for him than others. And maybe it's not a case of changing it, but giving him a reason. And part of me wants...
that would make sense too.
Yeah.
It just seems that because his character, even though he's in a child's body, seems very mature a lot of the way through the movie. And then at that point, he starts to change, right? He starts to become more childlike, right? Because he becomes obsessed with Caleb's sister, like obsessed with creating a vampire who's his own size and his own
And that's,
physical age.
Well,
right?
he sees Maze turn somebody to be...
There's jealousy there as well.
Yeah, it's jealousy, and it's like, well, if she gets to have a companion, why can't I?
Which also, when you're talking about like how old he is, to be looking for a child his own age makes it super creepy. Like, I could see if he's been, like, in Interview with a Vampire, they sort of tackle this. It's funny, he's one of the first, like, the child vampire that's there. And then Interview with the Vampire, she's an adult, and she actually wants adult companions. She's actually grown up in her head, but still in a child's body. That's sort of what they probably should have done with him. But I mean, if he's looking for a companion, maybe he wouldn't go immediately for another child, because that doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, and I can kind of see what he's thinking, because in the real world, he's still got to get around in it, and wandering around with another child would seem appropriate, and waiting 18 years for her to catch up to him mentally is kind of a blink in the eye for somebody
Right.
who's that old, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I would have loved for that to come in, but I mean, they're not meant to be normal either. They've thrown away what is normal human living. So to do something that's like that disturbs us and gets us under our skin is probably appropriate for the film.
It is.
And for their character, because they treat humans as meat.
But I wonder if if you hadn't tackled it more, like he's like you say, he's probably the oldest. He may have turned like he turned May, but did he turn? Who else did he turn? Like, if he's been around a
Jesse,
long time,
right.
if he turned Jesse, I mean, the whole point, it could be like this whole thing is like, I want, you know what? I turned adults, and now you kind of treat me like a kid. I'm going to turn an actual child, and then I will be the adult finally.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little more backstory on Homer, because I think he's an important character.
Yeah, I think
that
he's
didn't
the
get
one-
enough attention.
Yeah, and I think and that's I think a great place to build a remake from is he's not an alpha male type character, but he's trying to build the family that he lost when he was turned.
Well, and
they are and it's working for him.
yeah, until Caleb shows up. But
Yeah.
and
It breaks up the dynamic a little bit, because he didn't make that choice.
That's right. May did, right? And I mean, you would think that Homer, being stuck in a child's body, you could have that backstory where he turned Jesse because he needed somebody to be his adult. in public, right? So it didn't look so odd that there was this child walking around or traveling by themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it's a simple fix to that part of the backstory, not fix, but addition to that backstory to sort of explain why they call him old man and give him a little more backstory, because I think he was really neglected.
And Diamondback, he's like, well, okay, it's just us now, but I mean, if we want a family, I'm going to need a quote-unquote mom.
She gets very little backstory in this, even as far as hinting at what her lineage actually is. We know a little bit about almost everybody else, but we get very little about her. But a name like Diamondback, I feel like most of his family came together in the 1800s during like that Wild West era and that Civil War era. But it's hard to say with her. I don't know.
Well, don't they have a conversation where he's like, I remember seeing you by the side of the road like that? So there had to be vehicles.
Yeah, she might have been later, so I'm guessing maybe...
I think she's second youngest.
Yeah, so she could be, 1940s, 50s. Actually, given that hair, I'm thinking 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of this is because she has a little backstory, we can play with that as much as we want.
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Right. There's certain things that are established that Homer is the old man, Jesse's the next oldest, then Severin, then Diamondback, then May.
Yeah.
But that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah, and that's like at the core of the heart of this story is a vampire family. Like, yes, it's a vampire movie that never uses the term, which I think is cool. It's about family, and that's also something that I think really made Lost Boys work as well. And I think about, like, Western vampire movies, and I think about the vampire genre, and those ones that have that Western feel always really work for me. Vampires?
I was just about to mention that one, too, because I really like that one. I like the book, too.
Yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Yes, that works.
Yeah, it's just something that's a good merging of two genres.
Well, and the vampires, they're the outcasts, so it's a very outlawed, outside of society thing, which is Wild West.
And they totally play that. I'm going to play the trailer here, but I got a pretty cool story about Lance Henriksen preparing for this role.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
Separate your head from your shoulders.
Do it fast.
All right.
The time's roll. No! You might as well just kill me then, too.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world. We'll give him a week, see if we can call him one of us. He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
I want to kill.
He makes you kill tonight. And they all belong to the night.
It's 3 hours short for a bus ticket home. You help me out?
What are you on?
Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing.
Amen.
Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of how.
Nervous? I would be too if I were you. Near dark.
Could be your boys falling in with control. Check out time.
Bought yourself some time, son.
God damn, it's my family. Let him go.
Near dark. Pray for daylight. The night has its price.
All right, that was Near Dark from 1987, written and directed by Kathryn Bigelow, with other writing credits to Eric Reed, who wrote another kind of Western horror movie I really love called The Hitcher, and we haven't done that yet, but we will someday, because, yeah, I have a beef with the remake.
Just one?
I haven't even tried watching the
Well,
remake.
that it exists.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not terrible, but I definitely have issues with it. But we'll save that for another episode.
Because that is a whole episode.
Yeah, this movie was budgeted at $5 million in 1987, and it grossed $3.3 million. Damn. But
if you add in...
No. Well, I'm sure with
over the years,
the cult video stuff, it's probably at least broken even or earned money. But, I mean, it would have been... I guarantee this movie would have been a hit at the time, except De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, DEG, went bankrupt around this time. So it got no press, it got no advertising, it got no push. So it was the company's last release, but it never got any kind of push whatsoever. So it just fell under the radar.
And with the cast that it has, I mean, you've got Henriksen.
Yeah, I mean, most of these guys were fresh off of Aliens.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. Is you've got like most of the cast of Aliens in this.
Yeah, well, that was James Cameron going, "Hey, this is your first movie. Why don't you use my cast from Aliens? I just finished up with them."
Yeah, exactly.
And it really was. They almost had Bean was almost in the title role, and I'm like, oh my God, how much better. I mean, this movie's already amazing, but how much more awesome would that have been if Bane had been in the lead role? I can totally see it, especially like that 80s Bane, he would have been on Terminator as well. And I'm like, I totally could see it.
Yeah, I think he was already a little old to play that age, but...
not in 87. Not really. He was just coming hot. He'd only done really Terminator and Aliens at this point, so he wouldn't have been too old for this.
Yeah, maybe not.
He would have been about the same.
In Terminator,
age.
he would look too old to play how young this character has to be.
Well,
that's what I think.
How young does this character have to be?
Well, then you have to eliminate. Like, I don't know. You might need to eliminate the dad if he still lives at home. It would be.
This is a small town.
That's possible.
Yeah.
I know, and I grew up in a farming community. Yes,
that's why I looked at you as I said it.
No, I know, but what I'm telling you is, like, there comes a certain point where Skippy doesn't live at home anymore. You might move into the city or do something else. That's just the way it is.
Well, they could have. I mean, they don't. They kind of suggested he lives at home, but that's an easy. That would have been an easy fix with an older brother, older character, because there's still a scene where he's stumbling towards the home, so he may have his own house, but he's trying to get home to his dad because he's feeling sick.
Yeah, they need to have a separate house. Like, he's not living in that house. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Well, no point do they actually tell us that he is. That's just. His natural place to go home to. I mean, I assumed he did.
Well, I kind of got the feeling that he was just out of high school age, like 19, 20, maybe. That was the feeling I got.
But even then, he looked too old for that. But I mean, in my casting, unfortunately, at least I got guys that are too old for that too. But everybody plays younger, so. Whatever. I'm just going what fits with my brain when we get to casting.
And that's the best way to go.
Yeah, because that's half the fun. This movie has IMDb rating of 7.4 out of 10, which is pretty good, personally. I'm gonna give it higher.
Yes, yeah. but as soon as you get into the sevens, that's a pretty solid
good
score, especially for a horror film.
Yeah, absolutely. This movie stars Adrian Pastar. If you don't know who he is, he's been all over television. You've seen him in Heroes and Shield and Supergirl, and he is probably the guy who's played Iron Man the most as far as voice work.
Nice.
So lots of cartoons where he's played that character. TV series and animated films and stuff like that. To me, he's like the voice of Iron Man. Yeah.
So, I found something just really interesting about Adrian Pastar. I didn't realize this, but shortly after this movie, he actually supposedly quit acting, moved to New York City, and just went on I don't know if it was a soul search or whatever it was, but he basically worked at a bed and breakfast for room and board for like a 6 months or a year, where I kind of figured out what he wanted to do with his career and with his life.
Right.
Yeah. So he's still fairly young in this movie. He doesn't have a lot of movies before this one.
No.
Yeah. So, honestly, he's more of a TV guy to me in my brain. So
and certainly he is now. Yeah.
Like I'd seen this movie many, many times, but I really only became aware of him in later years, beginning in the 2000s with Heroes and stuff, where I think I'd seen him a few times before, but that's where I really started making the connection, because in the Marvel universe he's Talbot on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so he gets around.
It's the one of the things that I thought was kind of funny here is that the supporting cast seemed to have more success than the lead, than the two leads did, because May kind of disappeared in the late 90s, right?
Yeah. I think her her biggest success, Jenny Wright, was Young Guns 2, which another movie I adore.
She's also in Lawnmower Man.
And she's also in Twister, but not that Twister.
Yes.
No, a different Twister.
Yes, with Crispin Glover.
Which is funny because there is Bill Paxton who is in that Twister.
I know. It's funny that the connections. But
Don't get your Twisters twisted.
The funny part is the Twister that Jenny Wright was in is also featured Susie Amos, who is now James Cameron's wife. All the James Cameron connections.
All the incestuous connections.
Yes. It all comes back to Cameron.
Yeah. Well, Lance Henriksen, a favorite of mine, is in this movie. We talked about it, Lance, in episode 108 when we remade Pumpkinhead. Absolutely. And we've talked about Bill Paxton before when we did episode 83.
Weird Science.
Weird Science. Jeanette Goldstein was, of course, a mainstay of James Cameron films. She's been in Aliens and Terminator 2, like almost everybody else in this cast.
It's kind of like if you weren't in Aliens, what are you doing in Near Dark?
Yeah. Yeah. Tim Thomerson, we just talked about, like, real recently.
Yes.
167, Metal Storm.
Yeah. More trivia?
Yeah, okay.
Tim Thomerson and Lance Henriksen are making a movie right now called Bring Me Lance Henriksen's Head.
That's what we... I brought that up during Jared said, Bring Me the head of Lance Henriksen, because Tim in the plot is Tim Thomerson is seeking out Lance Henriksen to find out how he had such a long-standing and good career.
And I have an answer for that,
I was about to say, that, isn't that based on his book?
Yes, but I have an answer for Tim. Mm-hmm. It's simple. You never got cast in a James Cameron movie. I looked to make sure. If you had, or
a Kathryn Bigelow movie.
He should have.
He should have.
He made some weird career choices.
He's really in this movie. When I was watching it and I was watching him be the dad, I'm like, he should have had like a huge career as like the awesome dad in so many. Like, I liked him as the father in this movie.
Oh yeah, because he's always had that white hair. He could always play older.
Yeah.
So him playing the dad of like a 20-year-old in this movie wasn't out of the realm, even though they probably weren't that far away in age.
Tim and Lance
were in their 40s.
When they made this, so
he's about the right age.
Yeah, absolutely. They were father's young.
And apparently they've been friends since they made this movie. Like, Lance and Tim are actual friends.
That's good.
How else would you get that movie made if they weren't real friends?
Yeah.
Bring me the head of Lance Henriksen. You got to know the guy.
Yeah, he's a really friendly dude, Lance. So if you ever get a chance to meet him at cons, please do it.
And do it soon. He's 78.
Yeah.
Holy crap, didn't realize that.
Yeah. Joshua John Miller, who plays Homer, he's the kid vampire in this. He actually wrote Final Girls, which we've all watched for 31 Days of Horror at some point of our lives, which I thought was really cool. Like, his acting credits are meh, but then I saw him like,
his
you
writing
wrote
is
Final
great.
Girls? Holy shit, dude, you got some skills. That was a really clever and well-written movie.
It was, and Queen of the South I've heard is really good, which he developed and created.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's doing all right.
Yeah,
I watched the trailer to that. I'm like, this might be the new one I binge.
Yeah.
It's really
and Marcy
good.
Leeds is the daughter, Sarah, the sister to Caleb in this movie. That's our cast for this. Though you had one more connection. There was a dude in the bar.
Yes, the unnamed teenager in the bar is played by James LaGrosse, who was also in Point Break, another favorite of Kathryn Bigelow. Yeah. But not just the first one, but the second one as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. I'm like, oh, because like when in the faraway shots, I didn't recognize him, but when they were like face to face, I'm like, holy crap, I know who that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's one of those actors where you've seen him in just about everything because he's had a huge career.
Oh yeah,
but it's playing smaller roles.
Yeah, he's one of those character actors, and actually the larger tough guy who's Bill Paxton, Severin, accosts as soon as they get to the bar, and there's a lot of toying around with the food, as it were.
Yeah, they're playing with their dinner.
He wound up in Terminator 2, and he's the one that Arnie gets his clothes off of in Terminator 2. So, almost all these guys have some connection, and that's the thing. You make an impression with camera, and or Bigelow for that matter. You've got work. You've got work for the rest of your life.
And I really respect what Bigelow is. You know that she could be working more if she wanted to be. but
yeah.
she makes films because she wants to make them. And she'll take the time it takes to make them and not just bang out movie after movie after movie.
Yeah, and the movie shows she's got a really good eye for the camera. I mean, just the opening with the mosquito that foreshadows the whole movie. I mean, it's not super subtle, but I really like it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and you know what? In 1987, that would have been considered subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But, I mean, the way she tells the backstory of the vampires without actually telling the backstory, I think is amazing.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a great way to use dialogue without having them sit down and say, well, this is what happened to me.
It's a very efficient
Yeah.
film in that regard.
Yeah. And it's not that long.
And it's-
right?
No, at like 94 minutes. And, I mean, honestly, I could have taken an extra half hour easily because this
Absolutely.
movie's pace is so great. Like, just give me more. I could watch these guys forever.
Yeah.
And it was great when you're talking about like how you use dialogue like that. Was I like having those little crumbs just sort of scattered amongst the movie where I'm like, who is this person? Then they give me a little bit. I'm like, ooh, but there's more, and then just a little bit more.
It's great. Now, I promised a quick story about Lance Henriksen preparing for this role because he was like, oh, yeah, this will be fun. Thinking about the role and the era that he might have been from, he basically created a backstory for himself to prepare for this role. He took like the old black tar and put it through its hair. That's how you would have dyed your hair back in the 1800s. And he actually went out and picked up a hitchhiker at one point who's like twice his size. But stayed in character and totally freaked this guy out.
Awesome.
And picked up this hitchhiker and totally freaked this dude out. And Lance had $80 in his wallet and handed it to the guy just for being a good sport because the guy could have easily killed him.
You know what would be amazing though? I would like to find out if that guy saw this movie later. Is like, holy shit, that was the guy that picked me up.
And that's the thing. Like, replacing Lance in a remake is going to be next to impossible because he's just a creepy motherfucker. Like, if he wants to put it on, you're going to be scared to death, regardless if he's, like, even now in his 70s as a withered old man. I'd still be scared shitless if he gave me those eyes and talked in that
Which is
deep
why I went a
voice.
completely different
Did
way
you
with
see Mom
mine,
and
'cause I
Dad?
couldn't do it. Yes.
No, I have not.
Yeah,
seen
you
it.
have-
I didn't. He's in the Mom and Dad?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
He's one of the grandparents.
That's awesome.
Yes. It took me a second to recognize him because he's actually, for the first time in his life, seems to have some weight.
When I saw him at a show a few years ago, he was looking awfully thin.
Yeah, well, he looks like he's put some weight back on. 'Cause,
Oh,
yeah,
that's good.
He filled out in Mom and Dad for sure. Right? But being of a similar body type, thin and gaunt and lots of cheekbones.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Lance. But yeah, it looks like he's finally started to put on some weight at 78.
Yeah, and I mean, that guy's
Yeah.
going to make films.
He's got
Forever.
5 coming in 2019 and
Yep.
5 from 2018.
Yeah, I mean, he's taking more supporting roles, but
amazing.
that's fine. Like, if we should do this one day, like, just so I can put him in a remake of Cocoon,
Oh, yes.
and everybody would just stay away from him because he's the creepy, cranky motherfucker.
Yeah, he does do cranky very well, which I enjoy. Like, he can do intimidating, but I mean, I've also seen him do where, like, yeah, no, I trust this guy. I'm down with him. Like, he can be kindly if he wants to be, which is good. If he can, when he straddles those two lines in the same role, you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Freaked out. Like, this is
That movie Stone Cold, like, he's this gang leader, and it's fairly terrible because it's led by Brian Bosworth as the hero, but he's so good in that movie. Like, I love this movie because of Lance Henriksen.
yeah.
And that's usually the saving grace in a lot of bad movies.
Yeah,
Lance Henriksen.
there's a fairly terrible Hellraiser movie that he was in, but it's good because Lance Henriksen is in it.
And
Like,
I could-
it's one of my favorites to watch because Lance is in it.
Absolutely. And I could say the same somewhat with Tim Thomerson. Jared said it was tolerable because I could have had Tim Thomerson to hold on to.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Now, this is going to be a bit of a battle for us because we really like this movie, and remaking something we really like, a cult favorite like this that is so efficient in what it does and trying to come up with something new may not work to our benefit.
No.
This movie was scheduled at one point to be remade by Platinum Dunes, but then we got saved by Twilight because Platinum Dunes got the rights to make the Twilight books, and they decided, well, we don't need to make another vampire movie if we're making these ones, so okay, Thank you, Platinum Dunes. For once, your shitty movies saved us from a shitty remake. Thank you, Platinum Dunes.
Yes, thank you for that.
Because if anything we've done on this show, Platinum Dunes, and every once in a while, like Texas Chainsaw was actually pretty good. But, man, I didn't want it. I didn't. And I still don't want it, but we're going to have fun. Honestly, I picked this because I just want to talk about the movie.
Yeah.
But, we'll give it a go.
It's a really good fit for this month because I mean, when you talk about strong female-driven horror, this is a great example of how well it can be done.
And well directed.
Yeah.
Like, and it's what I'd like to see is like, I think we're not looking to make it better. What I would like is like if we could like throw a budget at this and really kind of expand and go a little bit.
Well, yeah,
more.
I mean, you give that Cameron and Bigelow action sequences they like to do. They're really good with character. Like, I just hand it back to them and give them more money and see what we could do. Like, I mean, honestly, I would love to see the backstory of some of these characters in like Highlander-esque flashbacks, but I fear that it might slow down the movie.
No, and I like the idea of keeping it within the dialogue the way it was.
Yes.
I do too.
Filling that out a little bit more.
Yes.
And well, because I really liked when you got away from these characters being monstrous, and then you started realizing, oh, their humanity's still intact, but they feel detached from humanity and this pack mentality. I don't know if it's because they're vampires and that's just something vampires naturally would do, or if they've attached to each other to replace families they no longer have, having lived such long lives.
And there was something really interesting that I noticed in the beginning of the movie is on that first hunt where they all go to hunt, they all go solo.
Yeah.
Right, except for Jesse and Diamondback are kind of a hunting team.
Yeah.
But everybody else.
And
goes
honestly,
solo.
the big scene in the bar, I don't think it was a case of them intentionally trying to cause havoc. It was, okay, this is your last chance to hunt Caleb.
That's exactly.
You've been
exactly what it
turned
was,
and you refuse to turn to our ways. We're trying to welcome you in, even though they're not very welcoming.
No.
I mean, they're just mean people. But this is kind of their way to teach him, because that's what they do. Like, we have a responsibility. We've turned you, and we have a responsibility to show you how to survive in this world. And if you can't do it, you have no business in it.
And I got sort of the idea, too, where it's sort of like, I know, Caleb, you think that everything is fine. The world is a violent and unstable place. And if you're upset about killing some random person, that doesn't make any sense. We'll kill any random people who happen by. Everything is chaos, and just get used to it.
Yeah, it's chaos. It's food for them. And, you know, even with the showdown of the cops, other than with Homer, there really is no fear shown in that moment. It's just like, yeehaw, this will be fun to get out of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an awkward scene because just prior to that, we see like Caleb wandering around outside. It's dark, and then he comes back, and the cops show up, and suddenly it's daylight.
Yeah, and those are the little itty bitty things that you would fix in a remake.
Yeah, there are some continuity gaffes in this movie, and
Well, he came back, but then, like, when they do show kind of daylight and the cops, everybody's asleep, so I just assumed that time had passed.
yeah, and I think it just was one of those moments where it was a clumsy cut, and maybe there was a little bit more there that just hit the cutting room floor. I wish I had the one of the older DVDs that had all the extra material in it, so I could see what wasn't there.
There could be a great moment of dialogue.
This was a VHS one for me.
Yeah, so there'd be some great dialogue there where he comes back from his little walk, and they're like, "Yeah, you're done as soon as daylight comes. You're out the door."
Yeah.
right. Just something simple, a little throwaway like that, and then you could have them have sort of suggest the passage of time and sort of maybe show the sun starting to come up, and then the cops rolling in.
Yeah,
right. It'd be just a really simple fix, but it would work really effectively too. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, like have the sun coming up as the cops are pulling in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved how she used the magic hour of dawn and dusk in
so
these
good.
movies, because, man, she was really good at capturing those moments.
She was. Yeah.
I loved looking, because I kept looking at it going, I love that middle time. Like, when he's driving her and she's like, we have to get home, the sun's coming up. You've been in those moments, like when sometimes you've been up all night and like the sun's coming up and it's not fully up, but it's still kind of light. And you're like, yeah, but there's like a danger to that moment, but it's beautiful if you don't burn up in sunlight.
Yeah. I loved how they were like traveling with black markers and tinfoil, because they were constantly changing their cars. Because, I mean, they're still committing crimes. They realize they appear human and they're treating humans like meat, and this is just the whole world's their shopping cart, but they still are committing crimes. If they got caught and had to go in daylight, they're screwed. So they're constantly changing their vehicles with whoever their victims are. I mean, we first see them in the motorhome, which was really interesting when you see this blacked out windowed motorhome come up to Caleb and pick him up as he's trying to run home after being bitten. He's already starting to turn, and he's smoking under his shirt, which was a really neat effect because they just took piping and had like 5 or 6 cigars under his shirt that were piped out through this piping.
So good.
Which,
Simple, effective.
yeah, simple and effective. And I hope it wasn't like next to his flesh, because I've had cigar burns on my chest, and ouchie.
Ow.
Yeah.
Crap, I've accidentally burned myself with a cigarette. It hurts.
Yeah, cigarette. Tried cigar when that cherry's a lot bigger.
But I mean, there's also kind of a magic point too, where you could. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, they got the motorhome, and then it sort of comes up that they've been changing vehicles, and it's sort of like through their victims. I'm like, if I was Caleb, I'd be like, why do you have a motorhome? What happened in this motorhome?
Yeah,
I would want to know.
Yeah. I would look at the motorhome, I see the kid's bike on the back, and I'm like, okay. And then we actually see that play later when Homer's out hunting, which I think is great. And then they ditch it later, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't you keep that? But I mean, yeah, it makes sense that you'd want to keep changing your vehicles, because otherwise you're going to get tracked eventually as people end up turning up dead and the vehicle's not around. So I get it, but it makes you, when you see that, that's disturbing, because it is usually small families that are traveling in motorhomes, and you think of what happened when they got that vehicle. And you can't help but
families
think about
are
that.
old people, but I feel it might have been a family, because I for some reason believe that bike came with that motorhome.
No, I think of my childhood, and we did a lot of family vacations in motorhomes. And, you know, that was my thing. That was how we camped. So it was just a family vehicle that, you know,
you could live in.
You could live it. You know, it wasn't just old folks, but it could be. Absolutely. Lots of retirement people use those, but it could have been because of the bike. I'm like thinking, oh, it was a family like mine. And that's what really creeps me out about that is, oh no, like what happened here is horrible.
Yeah. Well, that detail, that bike is the detail that kind of indicated to me that it was probably a family.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what sells how terrible that moment is. Like, we never see it. It all happens before the film even starts. They have the motorhome. So, but you've just filled in, and just that detail is one of the most terrific things about this movie.
I have a thought too, like when we're talking about like when they're arguing about like Homer wants to turn Caleb's younger sister, he'd be like going, "You stopped me in the motorhome. I'm not going to let you stop me now." Because he could have wanted to have turned the
just
child.
To give you a little more story about that. Yeah,
he's like, "I need a child."
Yeah. This is maybe a constant argument they're always having.
Yeah, because they're probably like, you're young and small. We can't have two of you. It's too arduous. And he's like, fuck you.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. He sees Jesse with Diamondback. He's seeing Caleb with May, and Severin just he's
just fucking nuts.
He's nuts, but he's handsome. Like, that's how he hunts. He gets all dolled up, and it's all really cheesy, but for some reason it works for him. And he can just pick up girls, and it's fine, and that's his dinner. He's fine. He doesn't give two fucks. Honestly, guy, girl, I don't think he would have cared.
Oh, I think anybody, think anybody's free game for him. If it's a guy, he's like, I'm getting the vibes from you. I can totally play this.
Yeah, so he'll get laid, and then he'll get fed.
Yeah. Well, I love how he's so, can I buy you a drink? I'm like, oh, that's ironic.
Yeah.
That's how you spice up the food,
I guess.
Well, that's the only way they can get a drink, right?
Yeah.
Get them boozed up first, then eat.
Probably but not always. You can they're pretty strong. They could eat without getting somebody boozed up.
Well, no, just because that's the only way they can get alcohol, right? Because they can't just drink alcohol. They can't drink
everything. Yeah, because we see that scene with Caleb in the chocolate bar. And other scenes where, you know, he just can't eat normal food anymore. Like that's one of the rules. I love how they kind of build up the rules of how these vampires work without telling you. So, you know, that scene where he's trying to get back home after he's left him again and buying the bus ticket, and he's really sick, and he buys a chocolate bar and takes a couple bites, and it's just like, oh, this ain't going down.
No. And then there's the scene in the bar, that great bar scene that we all love. Jesse orders a beer with a glass. He can't drink the beer, but they want the glass for the blood, right?
Yeah.
So that's another place where they sort of set up that dynamic. At no point does anybody actually order and drink a drink.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, that's not true. Severin drinks that guy's
that's
shot.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they can. I think it's just
But he doesn't
very...
drink it. He spits it back in his face.
That's right.
Ooh, there we go.
That's right. He does. He doesn't try to digest it.
No.
Maybe it's a very dogma thing. You can drink it, but you have to spit it out.
Yeah. But I want to go back to the bus station.
Yes.
Because there's a cop there who notices Caleb, and he's wobbling and sick.
He seems strung out.
He seems strung out and questions Caleb about it. There's a moment where he's got his hands near his face and he's checking him out, but his hand's all wrapped up and you can see it's bloodied.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't know why, and it doesn't play in the film. I want it to mean something, like, because I don't even see like Caleb really reacting to the smell of it. I think it should.
That was bugging me too, because I saw something happening there that never materialized.
Yeah.
Right, because you saw there's a brief reaction, but it was really brief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because you saw him look at the bloody hand.
Right? I think I would really dig if he'd already encountered these vampires. Maybe he was on the scene in one of these moments where Homer pretends he's been hit by a bike, but Homer doesn't want to attract too much attention, so he doesn't go full feet on it, but bites this guy.
But then he'd still turn though.
That's what I'm going with too. Yeah,
it is nighttime.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know yet. He's still like early moments. It's fresh because it is a fresh wound.
Yeah.
You can see it's a fresh wound.
I wonder if that's something that may have actually been cut.
I wonder if it was too.
Yeah.
What would have been cool is like it is a fresh wound, and like you sort of once you start turning, you kind of heal up really good. Like if he's like, can I just see you got bit? Can I just see? And then he removes the bandage. There's no mark there. Caleb's like, oh, you're fucked. Because he could say, "Is like, look, I've dealt with a lot of people tonight. I got bit by some junkie or something. I don't know." He could
Again,
get bit by somebody
efficiency of dialogue that could have been in there, and I'm sure that was something that hit the cutting room floor.
Yeah,
you could take that into some really interesting places where Caleb actually does make his first kill, but because it's another vampire, he doesn't feel like they're human. Like he's actually putting this guy out of his misery. You could have
he's investigating him. They're supposed to be cold. Like he'd be like, "Dude, your hands are cold. Where have you been?"
Yeah, like you could totally set it up, but because he's comfortable drinking May's blood because she's a vampire and he's not going to kill her, right? He could actually think he's doing a good thing by taking this future vampire out of play.
I think that's too early because I don't think he even understands what he is yet.
That's true. No. He doesn't really understand what he is. That's true.
He does gotten a sense of who Jesse and his family are at this point, and that vampires might be real at this point. But I think it's still that's one of the reasons he's running from them, not just because they're psycho, but this refusal to believe this bullshit. Vampires are real.
Well, May does tell him you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. She's way ahead of him. Yeah. She's like meets him. He actually gets on the bus, and then he has to get off because he's so sick, and the bus just rolls on. Doesn't are you okay? Do you want us to wait for you? No, fuck you.
No, that was the 80s. You could drop people off in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Going back to the cop just really quickly. If we're gonna do that, you have to eliminate that character somehow. So you need a moment where you just show him maybe a pile of ash because he's gone out in daylight and
no, he's been called to the shootout at the motel. So as the sun comes up, he starts smoking, and they're like, "What the fuck is going on here?" Because there's already chaos happening, and as the sun starts coming up, he's getting out of his vehicle, and we see him throwing up in his vehicle or whatever, and then the sun comes up, he starts smoking. People don't even realize he's just gone up in smoke.
Yeah,
although these vampires explode, so I guess they
would notice. But have to make it noticeable.
But maybe it happens during the shootout because this is dawn, right? So this could all happen in the shootout, and maybe it looks like the vehicle exploded because of the gunfight, which is crazy.
Yeah, but as long as it gets dealt with, right?
Then we can take him out of play.
Yeah. Yeah,
or you
but
can
I like the whole idea of having him being
the big explosion. I just want Jesse to look at Homer, this accusing grin. Did you do that?
Or even better, again, Homer, or again, old man.
Yeah. Look, if you can't finish him off, call us. We'll do the job. Dude, this is what we decided. Or alternatively, if you want to make kind of a bigger thing, he feels he's smoking, he feels he's sick, and he runs into the motel owner's place and starts that place on fire.
You know, maybe he's first on scene when it's still dark.
Oh, yeah. That would be better.
Yeah, and he's the one who calls for backup, and maybe at this point they've dispatched him or something. We could do something there.
Yeah, but yeah, you definitely have to do something to take him out of play.
Yeah,
right.
Because I kind of like the idea, and if he's not aware,
yeah,
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Right, it would add another whole dynamic to the movie.
Yeah, so maybe he's called for backup. He's found these guys, and the sun is coming up at this point, and like. He's already exploded or whatever, caught on fire before they even get there.
Yeah, I mean, you can even have like again dialogue. You remember that kid you reported roasting at the bus stop or the bus station?
Yeah.
We think that he's involved in this. You might want to show up.
Right.
Right. You tie it back to the bus station.
Right.
Yeah. You could have like if he's already burned, they're like these psychos set this place on fire.
Yeah, there was something that did bug me because Caleb let his prey in the bar get away. He let the last survivor, go. And it's the kid that actually winds up bringing the cops, despite the fact, how did they know where they were there? But we've solved that because the cop finds them first. And now we have the witness that's brought with the rest of the cops as well, which doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't bring a witness to a crime scene. But okay. Or maybe he's brought to identify them.
Yes.
Wasn't it because the vehicle they had, because when they're driving away, it's like they're going to be looking for us in this vehicle.
That's right.
So they knew which vehicle, like they knew the vehicles that were at the bar and they knew the vehicles that got took off. So they ran the plates and people, that's how they found them.
Yeah. So maybe the first cop finds the vehicle and this guy's already gone to the cops as a witness and is brought to identify the vehicle as well as the perps from this horrible crime scene that they were probably already at. They probably just brought him as a victim because they've already are investigating what's left of this bar that's been burnt to the ground.
And he'd probably be a suspect too.
Right, because he is a survivor. So, and let's face it, if you told that story to anybody, it'd sound ridiculous. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. He'd probably be a suspect.
Well, and not just that. Even if he isn't a suspect, they're like, this guy's fucking crazy, so we're going to take him to the loony bin on our way home.
Yeah, so there's lots of ways to justify him being in that cop car.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we've kind of fixed that somewhat.
Yes. But yeah, like there is a moment, like it's an interesting thing. I think it should be explored where somebody is a vampire, but there's nobody telling you what to do or that you are one. Like how terrifying would that be? Like you feel different stuff's changing. You don't feel right.
You don't know the rules.
Yeah, and that happens with Caleb, and we see how that mentorship goes with these guys, but how alternatively how the mentorship would go if nobody was around.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think that's a great counterpoint to that story.
Yeah.
No, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
It fills in the bleeding hand. You definitely need to fill out Caleb's reaction to it because like you have him smell it and just sort of reacts like that doesn't smell right almost, right? Like you sort of have that look. It's like he's reacting to it somehow.
Yeah. Now, like Tim Thomerson and Sarah, who are trying to track Caleb, like they see Caleb being taken at the beginning of the movie when he's obviously in some kind of stress. They don't know what's going on, but as he's trying to come home and he's stumbling on the ground and really struggling in the sun as he's turning as well. So he's basically been kidnapped, but we're not sure how they're being tracked. I think they see a general direction and they're kind of traveling in that direction, asking for help. And maybe we can also establish the cop in that scene as well as one of the people they talk to. Because we do see them talk to the police officer, but it's not the same guy. If you're going to bring that guy in, you might as well have him recurring.
Yeah, and I've got a way to make that work too. Is he runs into Caleb in the bus station, right? Lets him go, roasts him. Right. Then he gets the call about this cowboy kid that people are looking for,
right.
And he's like, "Fuck! I just had him."
Yeah.
Right. And then he goes looking for him, and that kind of ties back into why he's what the whole story is like. Well, now he's been spotted at the bar, and we think that they're at the motel, and that's where he goes to do like a visual verification type of thing,
right?
Before the rest of everybody shows up, you can sort of see Caleb out doing his walk. It's like, oh yeah, he's here, and that's how they find them.
Yeah, because I mean, it does make sense that Loy and Sarah would kind of get ahead because they don't know what they're up to. They've got maybe some signposts of where they've been. Maybe they're listening into police band or whatever. They've got some idea of which direction that Caleb is traveling.
Yeah, because they're ahead of them.
Yeah,
right?
they are ahead of them.
They've gotten ahead of them somehow.
They were originally headed in the wrong direction, but they had to make a turn. But that's because they get notified, oh, he was spotted here.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so because you do have to sort of figure that out. And the one thing that I thought might work, something we have to address is when in cases like this is our day and age, cell phones.
Well,
you have to make sure that Caleb. You do address that, because even in these small towns in the United States, there's cell phone coverage now. There's nowhere you can go now without getting coverage. So.
There's areas where there's not a lot of coverage. Like when you're in the middle of nowhere, trust me, there's some shit.
I like how there's
no coverage.
Spots, but
I like how this movie is kind of ambiguous as far as its time, and we can kind of keep it that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, him calling home instead of going to a phone booth isn't a big deal as him pulling out a cell, but maybe he has to find a phone booth because he has now been taken to a place that has dodgy coverage.
Well, honestly,
or they just take it away from him.
They just take it away. They've taken it away.
But you just take it away. Just
honestly,
to make sure that we address it.
Yeah,
part of the struggle has to be finding a phone, because I don't know if you've paid attention.
Yeah,
there aren't a lot of phone booths or public phones
you can track
anymore.
it, and that's maybe something we have to bring up with the family as well. They're stealing older vehicles for a reason.
Yeah.
Like they initially, I thought when Severin takes that one off the lot, he goes for the old one because it's just something a little more familiar to him that he kind of dug, because they were better, faster, cooler vehicles there. Yeah. So it was something that he associated to a little bit more. But
it also has to hold so many people.
But yeah, it has to hold so many people. It has to be family vehicle. But now they have to make choices of having vehicles that don't have like the fucking GPS and shit. And I like the idea that they have to target older vehicles.
Well, because they're easier to steal and they can't be tracked.
Easier to steal and can't be tracked. That's just an element of survival.
Yeah.
I think that's that I kind of dig. And getting rid of the cell phone's easy enough. You just drop it, and that could be a first signpost of, well, we tracked his cell phone to this place, and here in the middle of a fucking desert or wherever.
Exactly. You can turn it into a plot element.
Or just a dumpster. They're like, the phone calls came from here? Okay, not
well, it doesn't even have to be a phone call. They've just tracked the GPS to this location.
Yeah,
and he should be here. But
there could be a moment there when he kind of wakes up in the motorhome, and he thinks they're not looking. He goes to make a phone call, and Homer catches him and grabs his cell phone and throws it out the window.
Yeah.
Right? Again, give Homer something practical to do.
Yeah.
Just something as simple as that, just tossing it out the window, and they're done with it.
Yeah.
Yep. You have to.
Yeah, but it acknowledges it without making it too much of a plot point, but then it can come back, and it's like, well, yeah, we know they're headed this way because his phone was 40 miles outside this town.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of them trying to convince Caleb, you're dead. You're dead to the rest of the world, and if you don't start learning, you're dead to us as well. Yeah. You will be gone.
And also the other thing too, like they'd be like, there's two reasons we have to kill you: A, because you know about us and you will tell people we don't want that, and B, if you're alone and dealing with this all by yourself, you're dead anyway.
Yeah, the only reason you're here is because May wants you here.
Yeah. Like a single vampire traveling alone doesn't do very well.
Yeah, and they kind of addressed in the motorhome, in that first scene in the motorhome, right, where Severin wants to kill him. It's like, let's just kill him, get him done, right?
Yeah.
But May pleads her case, and
well, all she says is like, you might as well kill me because he's already turned. So
yeah, so you can expand on that a little bit, but I think that works strong enough that way. But there could be a little bit saying, you're already dead, but you'll cease to exist if you don't stay with us.
Yeah. I think another thing we might have to address, and I don't know how, but if it's the blood transfusion. Is it really that fucking easy? Like, I love this movie, but
that is the weakest part of the whole movie.
It has always bothered me. Is it going to be that easy? And especially, I mean, this is his dad, who's like a farm vet, who is doing the transfusion, but you have to do a full blood transfusion.
Exactly.
And you're not going to be able to empty your body into his in one go.
And the only thing I could think of as like a workaround is, okay, you know how diabetics go and they get like kind of their blood, like before they can get a kidney transplant, dialysis to like kind of scrub their blood, as it were. That seems to me the only way you might be able to keep that type of deal in. Because
I
we want
like
to.
the idea of dialysis.
Yeah, or the full blood flush. I can't remember what it's called. There's an actual term for it.
Yeah, it's the same type of deal.
But I like the idea.
Or ultimately, leukemia patients with a marrow transplant, because marrow is what helps you make blood.
But yeah, I mean, then he's getting really complex. How do you make that happen?
It is complex,
Now
but
you
I'm
have
just
to bring
saying.
it.
This isn't the
but
first
that's
time.
okay, because I mean, we're trying to make this different, and that's the big plot point that's going to be different, and that might be a whole new character.
Well, and that's where I was
don't know.
going. Yeah, because the transfusion as a cure for vampirism has been used before.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read it in books and all that stuff.
I mean, inherently, it makes sense to such a fresh vampire like Caleb, where
Yeah.
he probably has more of his blood in him than
True.
anybody else's.
Yeah.
So you could probably get away with doing a half-assed transfusion, but
Yeah.
somebody who's like
May
4 years down the road, like May, that makes a
Yeah.
whole lot less sense to me.
Yeah,
Like,
and so I mean, you bring
that's
in
the part you got.
an actual doctor who has access to a proper theater and actual blood bank to wholly
Yeah.
replace their blood.
I mean, I want
right?
to keep this in the South. I want to keep that Western feel, but
Yeah.
at this point, I feel like we do need something
Well,
more.
Yeah.
You know what? I feel that this was something that was sort of hinted at, because what they're doing is they're doing injections to like vaccinate the cattle. So having the blood transfusion be quote unquote a vaccination with the new blood is sort of what will work with Caleb, again, because he's new.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't address the happy ending with May.
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But should we even have a happy ending? We don't address it because it doesn't work.
See, I expected that the first time I ever saw this movie, I sort of expected that maybe like, oh no, and then it doesn't take. I just didn't expect I didn't expect a happy ending. I expected a downer, if I'm honest.
I mean, she doesn't have to die per se, but this is still an ongoing problem.
Yeah. Well, I had this thought, and I mean, feel free to poo-poo it, but I liked the idea that the transfusion isn't a cure. It's not a placebo. It treats the symptoms, but it doesn't fix the disease. So they become immune to daylight, and they're because the transfusion allows temporarily, and the transfusions also feed their need for blood, right? But they still have the strength, and if they don't get regular transfusions, then they will start to revert back to needing to feed. And
that's a neat idea, filthy daywalkers.
Yeah, right? But I like then it works a little bit better because it's not really curing them.
Yeah,
right?
it is a temporary fix, and if you're going to remake it, ideally you're always trying to set up that sequel.
Exactly.
Which is a possibility. There was a scene in this movie that maybe we could bring back in because of that, and maybe this is a formation of a new family, very similar to what Homer was doing, because we do see everybody meet their end as Homer burns and explodes, and we see the final conflict between Severin with the truck and the big fireball that engulfs him. I love how he's like half burnt and just torn up, and then they blow him up with the tanker. But
I love the way they foreshadowed that too early in the movie.
But this is, Jesse and Diamondback have just seen their family die, and it looks like they're going to try to run down Jesse, or Caleb, I should say. Jesse's going to run down Caleb, but this is kind of like, we're screwed. We're in this fresh car. It's not fully protected. Let's drive into the sun together. It feels like we've lost our family. There's nothing left for us in this world, which is a very romantic but tragic ending for these villains you've actually kind of start to like.
Yeah.
Because they have tried to take Caleb under the wing. They've tried to bring Caleb into their family, but Caleb's from a different world where people are kind.
Well, and
these guys are like really rough and have really disconnected from the rest of the world.
Well, and Caleb is very strong-willed. He has a very strong sense of right and wrong. Yeah. And you get the sense that May isn't that person.
Yeah.
Right? So it was very easy for her to be sort of truly turned.
Yeah. No, she still doesn't feel like she belongs within that family with Jesse and Diamondback and the rest. She still seems to...
Which is why she goes looking for Caleb. Why she turns Caleb in the first place.
Which is sort of also, I think, part of kind of the thematic of a lot of this movie, where it's that magic hour between dusk and dawn. That's where May is. That's where she's living, because she's partway between those two worlds.
So here's my solution, and it goes to something that was actually cut from the original film. Kathryn Bigelow initially intended, I don't think they even shot it, but they had initially intended for Sarah to get bitten by Homer. And then they used the same trick to cure her.
Yeah.
But what if she is turned? They've already realized with Caleb it is a temporary fix and it goes away fast. So now at the end of this movie, the family is pretty much gone. May's the only one left. They've already attempted and they realize it's a temporary fix. The only human left really is Loy.
Yeah.
So to keep the family together, alternatively, is now they've become the new family of vampires.
Yeah, because I mean, you could see Loy is like going, "These are my children, and I can't leave them,"
and chooses to turn with them to keep his family together.
That would set up a really cool sequel for sure.
Yeah. And I like the idea of that, but this is a very different set of vampires who are going to try to traverse the world in a much different way.
Yeah.
And I would love the idea of how that they come through different ways, like going, "Those are the type of people we kill." This is like they have their own rules and their own code.
Kind of like Venom at the end of Venom.
I mean, if they feel like they can feed and they can do the transfusion and they've worked their way into the world where they can almost work normally, or at least actively walk in daylight, even in temporary, they'd still have to function at night, which means there's a lot of adapting that would have to happen, but that doesn't have to happen in this movie.
Although
we just
set it up for a sequel.
Yeah, we just have that moment of, again, because family's so much in this core, and that gives the father, Loy, who's been hunting for Caleb, a really poignant scene at the end.
Yes. Yeah, where he makes a choice.
And they also have to, and this brings up, if you're talking sequel type of idea, you will have to point at the point that Loy's gonna have to actually sell the farm, because you can't be a farmer and not be able to go out in daylight.
Yeah, well, I mean, eventually that would be your sequel is, okay, they've tried to make this work. It's very difficult. They're having troubles, and maybe they're encountering a new group of vampires.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I guaranteed this isn't these aren't the only vampires, because somebody had to turn Homer, and
so on and so on.
Right?
Yeah. So I mean, thematically, now you've got somewhere to go if you choose to do that. But even if you don't, you've got a really cool ending.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh damn, they had to sacrifice to stay together.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
Yeah. And on top of it, the fight, that final scene between Severin and Caleb, where they're with this rig and the fighting and all that stuff, because Caleb's still technically a vampire, you could have a bit where Severin deals with, which should be a fatal blow, but it's not. And you can see this. You can have this great moment of confusion across Severin's face, going, "What the hell?" Right? Because they know that they think that he's managed to make himself human again.
Yeah, because he's warm blooded.
Well, I think at that point too, that should be when Caleb realizes that this temporary fix is just temporary, and he has not turned back.
Yeah, exactly. It could feed a whole bunch of great moments, and you could have a really epic fight scene between him and Severin then before the whole thing with the rig, right? It's because the Caleb can realize that, well, I can never beat him unless it's daylight or I burn him, right?
Yeah, and it's temporary. I mean, maybe part of the temporary is like his abilities do go away, but he realizes that his strength is coming back, that this fix is wearing off.
Yeah.
Yep. Which and then when you're having that moment
adds more dramatic tension to that final moment, because it's happening in daylight.
And when you're adding more with like Diamondback and Jesse, where, you know, maybe because Caleb's already realized, and like Jesse's like, yeah, no, I mean, like, you think that like you're just some human. He's like, oh, really? Like, it's like, I was told you don't kill your own, and it's like this whole thing where Jesse wants to kill him, and you're like, damn it, that's not what I'm supposed to do.
That wasn't a rule, because they had no problem trying to kill him.
True,
at the beginning
but
of the
I mean,
movie,
I would use that because they kept trying to bring him into the family. They kept trying and trying.
Yeah.
And you don't do that unless you sort of think.
I don't think
and
there's
the only
a
thing
rule
that's,
there.
Well, the only thing
they
that
kind of
saved.
suggest that there is.
The only thing that saved his life was May says, you might as well kill me because he's turned.
Right.
If that wasn't a rule, why did that work?
That's true. Maybe there is a rule.
And that's where it could play really into the motel scene, because they won't kill him, but they will. They can make him go out.
Exactly.
They can
They can make him leave the room.
Yeah. Not make him leave the room. Exile him.
There we go.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can choose when they're going to exile him. So it's like, okay, well, you're exiled as of dawn. Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Boom.
We're not killing you, but
It is a death sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We're not actually killing you, but it is.
Walk the plank.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it is.
So
It's a walk
it-
the plank for vampires.
Totally sets that up without breaking that quote unquote rule that we've kind of inferred is there.
Yeah.
Well, not inferred. They kind of,
Yeah.
in that moment, that's basically what I learned. So
All right.
this-
Well, I think we got a neat structure at least.
Without changing the
not
core
a lot,
of the movie,
because
just-
I think the core really works in this movie. And like I said, I don't think it needs one, but
No.
if you're going to remake it, you got to add to it. You got to make some changes.
Fix the little things that don't quite work.
Yeah,
Like the
and-
transfusion never did work for me.
And this movie does deserve to
See,
find a proper
I
audience.
thought, but here's the whole thing. With the transfusion, when I thought it was the foreshadowing with like when he's vaccinating the cattle, I thought that was what the blood was doing. That's what I thought. That's what I thought it was supposed to be, but they weren't very clear on it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I didn't pick up on that
Yeah.
at all.
But I think we fixed that by having it be
Because I mean, here's the deal: like maybe when you're bitten by a dog that has rabies, there's a time frame where you are going to be fucked and not fucked, and it takes a bunch of apparently large needles going through your belly into your spinal column to stop that. So there might be like a twilight time where you can fix something. So I thought that's what they were getting at. But May, you're right; it shouldn't work for me.
Yeah.
No.
So in order to address it wholly, I think we've come up with a great solution for that.
Yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's bothered all of us. So, yeah, I think that would work. And maybe it works temporarily with me, but I'm going to say it doesn't at all.
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, who knows what even her original blood type was that you think
That's
would be something that's
what?
important, right?
That wasn't it. That was when you're talking about like the transfusions bother you. What bothered me was like they gave May their blood. They have no idea whether she's A, B,
No,
AB positive.
if they were just
If they chose the wrong one, they
if
would've
were-
fucked her.
Yeah, well, if they were just transfusing her own blood, her body as a vampire would just react to it like she's ingesting it. It would probably treat it the same way. I would think.
I don't know. See, I would say like this new blood, even if it wasn't the right type, it's been so long.
It doesn't.
She would
matter.
have those vampire
Yeah.
antibodies attacking this new blood, like
Yeah.
the vampire blood cells attacking the white blood cells.
And that's why like a full blood flush would have to
Yeah.
be the
Yeah.
only course, right?
Yeah.
But again, because your blood's in your cells, this virus, quote unquote, is going to. I keep doing that. Is going to be in their cells, and that's why I think it does work for everybody, but only temporarily, and maybe less so for May. Right? Like she gets to see the dawn, but. And you think, oh yeah, it did work, but then all of a sudden she starts. So it's through repeated transfusions it works longer, or through repeated processes it works longer, but it still never works
Yeah.
entirely.
And they'd have
because
to
the
I mean, and
cells-
at some point they probably have to say is like the only like
They
they go to a doctor and like the only way this would ever take for you is if we completely replaced all the marrow in your body,
Yeah.
and we can't do
Yeah,
that.
they literally have to get medical records for her to figure out what's going to work. 'Cause
Yes.
obviously not the right blood type. Replace the marrow in her. Like
Yeah.
I do like some of these solutions, but
those are sequel
overall-
solutions.
Yeah, overall, I
But-
think for this one we've got something that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And kinda
I
works.
do like
Yeah.
the fact that the whole family turns at the end. I like where we went with that. But
Yeah.
what I'm just saying, like suggesting why this solution was in this movie, and because I took the foreshadowing earlier.
Yeah,
But-
well, I mean, 87, it kind of works, but yeah, it's fine. We've seen it so many times now that I think you got to do something new with it.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Well, with
and the fact, I
dialysis.
like the idea that it doesn't work. Like it's a temporary fix. Like
It treats the
it's much
symptoms
like
not a cure.
dialysis. You still have
You still have to keep going
you
because
still
your
have to
body's
do
still
it.
not right.
yeah, and it will never be right.
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's what we've done.
yes.
So cool. All right, I dig it. Okay, let's do some recasting. This is gonna be tricky because this cast is pretty tight.
Absolutely.
You know what? This was probably the first time I've ever gone, I do not want to do recasting.
I know. I didn't
I-
either. So
I mean,
I'm
I
just.
think I did
had
okay,
some cool. I think I did okay too. I mean, I don't think it's as strong. I think Diamondback's probably one of the weakest ones. But
Diamondback, I had
Diamondback.
so much trouble with because I just love Jeanette Goldstein. I love her.
Trisha's gonna love my Diamondback. Yeah.
Nice.
I actually thought that was
Jeanette
one of the
Goldstein's
easier
amazing.
ones because she wasn't so defined that you could do almost anything with that character.
You know what? I wanted more with her. You get hints of it.
Yeah.
How she interacts with Homer, is like she knows he's older, but at certain points she's still like, this
Treats
is
him
my
like a kid.
child.
Yeah.
Like, I feel that there was a child that she's
and
missing.
I get the feeling she joined in, was probably turned by Jesse, and was completely out of love. And that mirrors what's happening with Caleb and May, which is why Jesse's at least tolerant to what's happening.
Yeah.
Ooh, or maybe part of the turning is like, she'd lost a child. She was done with everything, and she was just... she's like,
and this is one of
this
those
is why
psychoses that she has as a maternal instinct that never went away.
She's like, I was in the middle of nowhere, picked up a hitchhiker. What's the worst that could happen? The worst already did.
Yeah.
And she just gave up on life at that point.
Yeah, and she maybe been out looking for the sketchiest person she could find, right? Or they met in a bar. She was hoping like, maybe that's the kind of thing that happens, right?
Just doesn't care anymore. She's like, fuck it.
Yeah.
And now she cares because she's got this new family.
Yeah, this is something that actually was good for her mental health.
Right.
And this disconnect of the world that she didn't feel like she belonged in anymore.
But I liked there's one moment I really truly liked, and I liked to keep in there when it's her and Jesse in the car, and these guys quote unquote try to rob them, and they're just sitting there going like, oh yeah.
Yeah, they try to carjack, and they're just like, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. I would just like one moment where it's like going, you know what? It's so rare that the fish come to us.
Yeah. Well, they're swimming upstream today.
Yeah, like he just turns on the radio. He's like, yeah, you're so fucked.
Let's talk about the soundtrack here. Some awesome
Tangerine
Dream. Yeah.
Like everything about this movie is damn near perfect. It all works so well together.
Yeah.
Right. And when you consider this is only like her second film,
yeah.
Right. For something to come together this well, this accomplished so early in a career,
shows how much greatness is sitting there.
Yes. And anybody who's not seen this movie is a fool.
Yes. And I have to say, like, the direction, like when you say there's that one moment with Homer that doesn't quite land, but Homer overall, I really liked watching him do that. Like when he just reacts so lackadaisically to like all the violence around him.
That's Joshua Miller, and I wish he'd stayed acting because in River's Edge, again,
he's brilliant.
He's so good in that.
Yeah.
Like
I liked that the fact that his kid, like, he was a bit of more heavy set. For me, it actually makes sense to the character. I'm like, I kind of want a fat kid, like, because he's that efficient of a hunter. Like, and you know, if he's getting full-sized meals, full-sized people, he's overeating.
Yeah.
True.
And I'm like, oh, that is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
I also want to have a scene where there's some quote-unquote bullies, and he's like, oh, you picked the wrong kid to pick on.
Oh, yeah. No, I actually deliberately cast a heavier set kid because that there was somewhat of that aspect in there, but was never played. I'm like, he's an overeater.
And that you're right. That does make sense because he's eating meals that are not the right size.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean that first scene where with the bike and the fake hit and run, he's eating a mother and a child.
Yeah. Oh, he's gluttonous.
Yeah.
Because he's old and he's really efficient at it because everybody thinks he's this innocent kid. Oh, I mean, I dig it. I dig
well,
it
and the other
thoroughly.
thing, too, he's like, I've been a kid for years. I'm not going to grow up and have a relationship. I mean, like, he's like, I know what sex is. I'm not going to get any, so I'll just eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is his vice.
Yeah.
So I dig it. And that's kind of how I cast it. But Trish, you want to go first?
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I had trouble casting this because, again, I really like this movie, and I think it's really good.
Yeah, I actually didn't have much trouble, but yeah, it was one of those, I'm like, I'm not going to be better.
No.
Oh, yeah, no. So for my May, I went with Saoirse Ronan.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just feel she can kind of capture
Similar
that
look,
thing.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Similar look, and I'd like to play a little more on how May can be these two things, I think.
Right.
Where she still has a bit of that humanity left, but she can probably be a little more... I would stand to make her just a slightly more brutal just because she's had to learn to survive.
Right.
And also survive within this pack.
I chose my casting based on that as well. I think is sort of somebody who can play sort of the ingenue, kind of naive, but there's also that flip side to her where she's got a really dark side that she lets come out.
Yeah, I feel like she hunts because of her attractiveness, and she draws the prey to her, and it's really easy for her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And she kind of likes it too. I want her to kind of like it.
Oh, I want her to want to play with her food.
Oh, they all do.
But like
That's in this
to
movie.
really play with it.
Yeah.
And then for Jesse, because I cannot replace Lance Henriksen. I can't even try. So I went a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with Ricky Whittle because I want the reference to the South, but he wasn't fighting for him.
I like it.
And he's
That's
also,
all right.
I'm also going where he's more of, he can be intimidating, but I want him to also be sort of just kind of charming and just sort of like cool and above it all.
Oh, then that would explain why he turned Severin too.
No, I kind of dig it.
And then I have, for Caleb, Thomas Brody Sangster, because I feel he's kind of young enough that it makes sense. Because I have trouble in that in-between time of casting people.
Yeah.
And that for Severin, I actually went with Adrian Pasdar because I'm like, I can make him a little older.
Yeah,
Sure.
And put him back in there. That's
Sure.
For Diamondback, I went with Gillian Anderson.
Okay.
Because I'm like, Jeanette Goldstein, she's about 5'2", and Gillian Anderson might be like a little shorter, but like they're tiny but mighty. Both of these women in every role.
No, that's a neat idea.
And for Loy, I did something fun because I read like all the past in this. I went with Michael Biehn because I'm like, he's going to be in this somehow.
There we go.
I passed on it once before.
And Homer is Sonny Siljic, and I wrote this down. I can't remember he's been in a number of things, but like he's played that sort of I'm a bit older than my face type of deal. So he's got a very otherworldly look. So I kind of did that also because it's sort of, it seems to me Homer was turned a long time ago as a child. He might be from somewhere else, completely different in the world, and just happens to be in the U.S.
Sure.
So that's what I did.
We
And
don't know.
For my director, I'm like, let's just bring Kathryn Bigelow back.
See, and I kind of thought that too. But
Yeah,
I'm like,
I didn't, but
I didn't either. But the thought did cross my mind.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we said it at the beginning of the podcast, like just hand it back to her.
Yeah.
And I didn't cast the younger sister because again, I'm like going. I even casting
Kids are
Homer,
tough.
I was like, kids are so tough.
Even casting Homer was tough,
Yeah.
right?
All right. Well, I'll take the middle of the pack here, and Sam can see us out. All right. For my Caleb, and keep in mind with my casting, I actually went with people naturally from the South.
Oh, nice.
That naturally have that aspect to them because, I just have to make it tougher. I think the exception was with the kids, to be honest. It was
Well,
my
they're
only
hard.
exception because kids are so tough to cast. So I naturally went with that. So for my Caleb, I went with Lucas Black, who I think
Nice.
just doesn't get enough credit for his talent. And yeah, he's a little
older
He's
now.
a little older, but last time he appeared in a Fast and Furious movie, they still had him play in the high school kid. Which was unconvincing, but why not? Like, we don't know at their age and what he's doing sticking around. He doesn't have to be living on the farm anymore, or maybe he's taking over the duties of the farm from his father. Doesn't really matter, but I like the idea of him in the lead of this movie. For May, I went with Ashley Greene, who played Alice in Twilight from the South.
Yes.
And to be honest, I just wanted that callback to the movie that saved us from the remake
Nicely
of Near Dark.
Love it.
For my Jesse, I went with Kevin Bacon because I could see it.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I could totally see it. It just was one of those things that was in my brain. I'm like, I can totally see you in this role.
What was that TV series where was he a cult leader in a TV series, or
No,
was he the guy
an FBI
investigating? That's it.
guy
Yes.
looking for a cult. Investigating cult leader.
But he can play like this charismatic
He can do dark.
head.
Yeah,
Oh.
we've seen him in dark stuff. So
Yeah.
I like this idea he can do intimidating and seems to be growing into that now that he's like 60.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's older than Lance was for this role, but Lance looks ancient regardless of what age he was at.
Well, I feel Lance somewhat.
I feel like
seemed
he's
to me-
finally catching up to the age he looks.
Yeah.
I felt like he was always a vampire because it seemed to be about a 40-year span where he looked the same fucking age.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. For Homer, the kid, I went with Jeremy Ray Taylor. He is a larger set kid. He's in Goosebumps, and he was the larger set kid from It.
Awesome.
The remake It. We'll cover that someday. For Loy, the father of Caleb, I went with Scott Bakula.
I get it. I
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, you can see it. It's just like, oh yeah. Yeah, he's kind of got that thing that Tim Thomerson had.
Yeah.
I had two alternatives for Severin. if I wanted to keep him a little younger, I thought Clayne Crawford, if he could behave. If he can behave on set, you can give him the role. If he still decides to be a douche, then I want to give that role to Timothy Olyphant.
Oh, I go straight to Timothy.
I mean, he was technically my first choice, and then I'm like, well, just in case, I'll give you 2 on this one.
Here's the deal. You know what? With Bill Paxton, there's a certain point where like he can be charming, but it didn't seem like it in this movie. But I feel like Timothy Olyphant, if he was like, "Hey, can I buy you a drink?" I'm like, "Oh yes, please."
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I feel like he
charming.
can do that mean. Like that's something that I thought Bill Paxton did really well, was being the asshole.
Oh,
and Oliphant can do that too.
Yes.
We just don't get to see him that much, and he likes playing Western type characters.
Yeah.
This is a great part for him, I think. So, I mean, given a choice, I'd go with Timothy Olyphant, but he's going to be older. But it doesn't really matter because he's still the right age. You know, if he was fighting in the South, or he's a gunfighter, it all makes sense. You know, it doesn't matter. For my Diamondback, I went with Welcome Back to Acting, Andy McDowell.
Oh, nice.
Again, wow, I actually can see that.
Yeah, she's
and I'd like to see her play mean.
Yeah,
like I don't think we've ever seen her do that before.
No. It would be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I want to, and I don't know. I think I'd like to see that. And because I made Jessie older, you know, she age-wise,
yes, she makes
her
sense.
and Kevin Bacon are fairly close in age now. And for Sarah, I had a couple of different choices. Again, like girls are tough to cast, little girls. But there was Shea Rudolph, who plays Maya in season 3 of Lethal Weapon.
Okay.
Or Scarlett Estevez, who plays Trixie in Lucifer.
Oh, Trixie.
Yeah. So either one, I think they're both good choices. I'm kind of leaning towards Trixie there.
I know, she's precocious.
Yeah.
I like that.
I also, I also had 2 alternatives for my directors. Oh. Initially, I went with Neil Berger, director of Limitless and The Illusionist, because I think there's a tone that he gets that I think he'd be able to do really well. And I'm like, wait, this is Women in Horror Month. Mm-hmm. So let's cast a female director. And I went with Mary Lambert, who directed the original Pet Sematary in 1989.
Yes.
Nice.
And that's
which maybe we'll save for next year's Women in Horror.
That's also a really good, and Pet Sematary is one of those ones, again, dialogue dripping out at the bit and pacing just
something
right.
that she gets. And man, that's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it took me 3 sittings to watch that movie once.
The way she uses unseen moments to make you horrified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I came across that, I'm like, oh my, this will be something else.
Yeah, that the scene with the truck and then just the shoe.
The shoe.
And the shoe
is still one of those traumatizing movies.
I had to stop.
Yeah.
I had to stop watching.
I was in the theater.
Yeah.
I couldn't go anywhere.
I knew it was coming because I've read the book, right?
Yeah.
I know exactly what happens there.
I didn't.
Yeah, but even though you know it's coming, it's still traumatizing.
Oh, it didn't. It didn't make it any less painful.
No.
When I was younger, I was like, they're not, are they? Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that remake's coming up, so maybe we'll talk about that next year
really
when this
soon,
comes
right?
around again. I can't promise you a month long, but we're definitely going to acknowledge Women in Horror again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And there was actually somebody on Instagram who mentioned that they would like to see us cover the new Pet Sematary when it comes out.
We will, absolutely.
Yeah,
it may not be right away, but we do
like
get
to give
them
ourselves
eventually.
a little bit of time. So.
Yeah.
Well, there's 3 of us, and sometimes it's tough to get us all at the theater at the same time, and that's why we don't cover them when they're brand new.
We don't want to do it when everybody else is doing it anyhow.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody else is talking about it. Why be like the rest of the crowd?
Yeah.
You're willing to wait for the best.
Yes.
Yes. But we're also old and cranky. So when we go to theaters and it's overcrowded and there's people everywhere, we get a little angry.
And they just stare at you when you're taking notes.
Yeah. And if it sucks, we're really mad now.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because we've just spent a lot of money. Yeah. So, we'll get there, but it won't be right away. Pet Sematary comes out later this year, so by the time we roll around this time again next year, it should be on home video or a streaming service, so we'll get it to you then at some point. But we will definitely cover Pet Sematary, don't you
Inevitably.
worry. We are we had it in the back of our minds.
We knew as soon as they announced it, really.
Yeah. Just as much, you guys know we will cover it. We're just waiting for them to finish it. So.
Yes.
All right, Sam.
Okay, so I'll take it home.
Take it, Homer.
Yeah. There we go. All right, I'll start with my Caleb. I went with young actor named Aramis Knight. He's only 19 years old.
Okay.
He's got...
You're the first person to cast people actually the right age.
I tried to stay pretty close.
Mine is closer.
Yeah, yours
He
is
at least
definitely
looks
closer.
young.
Yeah.
One
Mine
of
were in
the-
their 30s.
Yeah. He's one of the actors in Into the Badlands. He also played one of the young people in Ender's Game.
Right.
And I like him in Into the Badlands, so I'm like, yeah, I could see him doing that. And I really like him because he's ethnically ambiguous.
Nice.
Right? Like he could be native, he could be Hispanic, he could be Indian.
Well,
and I'm kind of liking the
farms in
idea
Texas.
of that type of casting, where it doesn't matter.
That's what
No,
I was kind of
it
looking
doesn't.
for too, because I'm like, you're down in the South. You're kind of. I thought it started in Texas, but I'm probably wrong, and that's where I was sort of looking.
I
but
kind of thought it was like around the Oklahoma.
I ran out of time.
Oh, it
So-
was actually, they did mention it. It was Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's where they started anyway.
I thought I'd heard that. So, having cast Caleb, I wait for my Loy. I just went with Bobby Cannavale because
Okay, cool.
Because they look like they could be father and son. So I'm like, yeah, that works.
Sure.
And well, we all love Bobby Cannavale.
And Bobby Cannavale, he's getting especially Mr. Robot. He's getting to the age where he is the older dad.
Yeah. For my May, I cast Julia Garner from Ozark. She plays the one who runs the motel for him.
Yes,
With a
yes.
really amazing curly hair and
Yep.
just.
She's
and
been
you
in
want to talk
so
about
many
somebody who
movies.
can play the ingenue and the dark side? Watch her in that because she's a badass.
Nice.
Cool. All
She's
right.
also really good in Grandma.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Yeah. For my Jesse, I went with Timmy the Elephant.
There you go.
Love
For
it.
Jesse. Okay.
Yeah, because
love it.
he can play the craggy
Yeah.
mean really well too.
Oh,
right?
sure. Yeah. Leader of the family. I can totally see it as well.
Yeah, especially now that he's sort of getting older and he's starting to gray a little bit. I kind of like it. And even though he's more handsome than Lance, he's still kind of got that craggy-ish look too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
unlike me, you don't have to keep the same dynamic,
Yeah.
and maybe going against that grain is probably a good thing.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, we talked about how Timothy can play charming and mean and dark really well, so he can do all of those really well, and that's I don't want to see. And Lance brought that to this character,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because there is a certain charm to his Jesse.
Yeah.
For my Severin, I cast Ben Barnes, who plays Russo in the Punisher series. Because if you've seen the second season, which isn't very good, but he's a high point because he goes through those emotional highs and lows and all over the place so well.
Yeah, I haven't got into second season
Yeah.
just yet.
Cool.
Yeah, but he's. As soon as I saw it, and you want to talk handsome. If you want somebody who's going to be the ladies' man, Ben
Nice.
Barnes is the way to go. For my Homer, I cast M.J. Anthony. He was the kid in Chef, Bad Moms he was in, and he was also
nice.
in Jungle Book as the young Mowgli.
Oh, okay.
Right, so
He's good.
Yeah, he's very good. And then for my Diamondback, I went with Ilana Glazer from Broad City.
Sweet.
Right.
Thank you.
I thought you'd like that, but you know what? I mean, I've kind of discovered her as a performer recently, and I'm like, oh, she brings that kind of mean fun to Diamondback really, really well. And you want to talk tiny? She's pretty damn tiny.
She is.
Yeah. Right, and she's got the hair too. I mean, she's got her hair is just great. I love her hair.
And she's such a ballsy,
Yeah.
she would be.
She'd chew up every scene she was in.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought she'd be perfect. And as soon as I saw Diamondback, I'm like, I already knew who I was casting.
No.
She's the easiest one for sure.
Yeah, she might have been the last one I cast, but I don't know. I like the idea of somebody like Andrew McDowell from all these romantic comedies
Nice.
being a badass.
Yeah. And then for my director, I went with the young director. She's only done one or two films, but she directed a movie from last year called The Ranger. Her name's Jen Wexler.
Okay.
I did watch The Ranger before I chose her as my director because I wanted to make sure she was a good director.
And she is?
She is. I mean, the movie itself is pretty straightforward slasher fare, but one thing I really liked about what she did is there's some scenes in a punk rock nightclub, and the camera work is very different than it is when they get into the second act. And then the third act, again, the camera work changes again to try and show you the mood of the environment.
Cool.
And the way she uses light, and yeah, there's somebody. She's got a future this week as a director, I think.
Awesome.
Right?
Okay, cool.
And she also wrote it, so that's a plus
Yeah.
in my book. And she's produced. She's only got 13 producing credits and only 3 directing credits, but all of the stuff that she's produced, for the most part, is sitting around a 5.5, 5.6 for ratings for
Right.
production, and this one's like a 5.2 for her first feature length film.
Yeah.
And she deserves it. I think she's going to do that really
Cool.
a director to watch. So definitely watch The Ranger.
That's awesome.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try and watch that because, I mean, that's the whole point. Like, at least in this one, there's a lot of stuff that's telling the story visually that we're just sort of getting.
Yeah, and
you don't know it's the first time.
And this movie kind of has a similar sensibility. It's a very different story, but it still has that sort of kind of punk rock Western sensibility. Right? That's what I'm like, okay, yeah, I like that. It works for me with her to have her as a director because I didn't want to go with my same old directors because, well, that's the whole idea is for us to grow too.
True.
Well, it's cool, and you gave us a director that's one to watch.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch The Ranger now.
Yeah, and a great addition to Women in Horror Month, which is what we're celebrating this month. It's 10 years of Women in Horror. Obviously, Women in Horror have been around longer than 10 years, but it's 10 years for what is the Women in Horror Blood Drive. So please do us a favor. Now that you've enjoyed our episode, hop in the car or take the bus or a cab or a piggyback on somebody's back. But Uber, ask them first.
Ask them first and make sure that, don't do it the whole way. Maybe switch out because it's just nicer to do it that way.
Because you're definitely going to pass out after you give blood to the American Red Cross or Canadian Blood Services and help save a life. That's what this is all about.
And with this movie, maybe a vampire's life. So.
And maybe a vampire's life, because we've been talking about transfusions and you.
And how did we just notice that tie-in right now?
I don't know, but we've segued in it somehow, and it would have been a lot smoother if nobody had pointed it out. But thank you for that.
Sorry,
I have no problem doing it.
It'll make it look like we planned it, but now it isn't.
I'm shrugging and embarrassed.
And hey, we're not the only podcast getting involved with Women in Horror Month. There's a lot of different podcasts out there that are talking about women in horror, being it literature or film or television, and you can follow all of that action on Twitter by following @AllTheHorror18 or looking for the hashtag AllTheHorror, as well as hashtag WIHMX for the 10 for Women in Horror Month activities outside of podcasting.
Yes, and we actually have one blogger involved for the Women in Horror Month as well. So watch for
that's awesome.
Nice.
Watch for the blogs.
Watch for those
every
articles.
Monday.
Excellent.
Cool.
Every Monday you've got some articles to read, and of course every day or two you've got another great podcast to listen to, especially if you're a horror fiend like we are. But we cover remakes of all sorts, so once we get out of this, we'll get back. We'll give horror a rest again. But,
yes.
make sure you support all those other shows that are getting involved with all the horror, and make sure you support us as well. We can't keep on going without your support, so please tell your friends and family about the show. Follow us on our social media. We are at Invasion Remake on Twitter, Invasion of the Remake on Facebook and Instagram, and Invasion of the Remake at gmail.com. You can find us in a ton of different places for the podcast, so make sure you share it out with your friends, but we're most notably on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and TuneIn Radio, Player FM, and we even get a little kickback if you listen to us on Radio Public. So make sure you get your
earballs
on the show. And we drop every Thursday over on YouTube as well. So if you like the
frickin' YouTube,
then you can check us out there. It's not the best place to find us, but our podcasts get out there. But some shows stay up there, some don't, because the musical cues and the trailers cause me problems, and sometimes I'll delete them. So make sure if you're subscribed, you listen to them right away. And the best way to do that is to ring that bell. If you like the show and you listen to us on YouTube, show us how much you love us by putting a ring on it. Get it? No.
If you liked it,
No.
then you
Sam
should
doesn't
have
like
put
it.
a ring on
Actually,
it.
I thought it was pretty funny. But I don't laugh out loud, so... See, that's my laugh. Did you hear that? That's me.
Yeah, he's out of breath.
Yeah, not really good for an audio medium.
No, it's really not. It's really not. But you know what? It is what it
And
is.
Sam, you missed our Carrie episode last week, but you're going to share your thoughts on another show.
I am. If all goes well, I will be visiting with our friend Melissa at Brook Reading briefly. And we're not going to do the whole podcast with her, but as far as I understand, she's going to have me on for just to get my thoughts
Because you did manage to watch them, but you didn't make it here.
No, things happened after I'd watched it, and I wasn't able to make it. But and I don't want to waste all that good research and that good good watching. So
Yeah.
right. And rather than recap something you guys already heard on here, I'm going to go over to another podcast and make you listen to me over there.
Nice. And there's just more Carrie, and that's good.
That's good. Yeah. Melissa's doing a bit of a companion piece because she's going to be focused more on the book, but we'll be talking about the movies as well.
Excellent. Any last thoughts about Near Dark?
No, you know what?
Watch it.
Just watch it. If you've not seen this movie, you really, really should.
I love this movie. I've seen it so many times, and I can't believe how much I've missed it out of my VHS collection because it's just been gathering dust, and I haven't got a Blu-ray or DVD copy of it, so I'll have to make that a change. Hopefully they'll come out with like a really cool like Arrow release or Scream Factory release with lots of special features. That would that would make me really happy.
It's a good movie where there's a lot of stuff, like even on repeat viewings, there's stuff like when he's stumbling through the streets, that theater that's flickering is playing Aliens behind him.
Yes, I'm sure. As a little thank you for giving us your cast.
Yes. Well, it's funny because this movie was made before Bigelow and Cameron actually got married. And
obviously we're together, though.
Well, obviously, because even though he didn't get divorced from his then wife until 1989, so he just went bang, bang. Right?
Yeah.
He really doesn't put any space in between any of his marriages, just FYI.
No, he really doesn't,
But what I thought is the use of this cast, because they had that history, I felt really kind of informed their dynamic.
Yes.
I think that had a lot to do with the chemistry of this cast, just because they'd already worked together before. That kind of shows on the screen. So
it does, and everybody in this has worked together at least once. Well, not everybody, but our core James Cameron group have definitely worked together before, right? Like and since too. There's a couple other crossovers.
Is the one that feels like the outsider, which he should, because of the nature of the character. That really never kind of did any more with Cameron or Bigelow.
No, really. and Tim as well, who should have.
Yeah, that's a shame. You know, he was in the Charles Band camp.
Yeah.
Well done, another one. Good job.
I'm on fire today.
Yeah.
In Charles Band camp. This one time at Charles Band camp.
I mean, you could be friends, but I would have worked with Cameron more.
Yes.
Just saying.
Taking every opportunity,
Yeah. All right, well, that was Near Dark. We got one more episode for Women in Horror next week. Then we'll be out of the horror for a little bit, but don't worry. We'll still trickle them in throughout the year, and, of course, we'll get right heavy back into it in October, which is a long way away now, but don't
already thinking about movies, I tell you.
Yeah. And we might have a few thoughts about the Oscars in one of our first March episodes, or one of our later March episodes, because we record ahead of time. But we might give you a couple of thoughts. But we're not going to do our normal Oscar special this year, mainly because you guys don't listen to them.
And I don't know, you have my usual rant. If it's an impression of a person who lived, I hate it. But don't get me wrong, loved Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody. I love him as an actor. I think he's fabulous and wonderful. I still don't think you should get nominated for impersonating a person. I just don't think so.
Well, considering how they made that a very friendly, family-friendly kind of film and didn't give an accurate portrayal of the man, I don't actually think it even deserves to be on the Best Picture list. But it just shows you how slim the list was. I mean, I think Black Panther's an excellent movie. Do I think it's Best Picture worthy? No. Do I think there are actor nominations that are well deserved? Absolutely. But I do not think it deserves to be Best Picture because they are just recycling the normal story they always tell in the first Marvel movies, except they do it really well.
They do it exquisitely, but it's still...
But
I don't know.
There you go.
It's better than some.
There's our little Oscar.
It's better than some of the Marvel movies, I tell you.
But that's it. No, we're getting out of here because it's going to turn into a thing.
Yes.
I've been Jason.
I am always Sam.
I continue to be Trish.
We are out of here.
Hey, Caleb. I hate to be an Indian killer, I really do. But you disappointed me. Now you're gonna have to pay. First, you're gonna give me back my sperm. Then I'm gonna knock your tonsils at your asshole. What do you think of them apples, huh?